everybody. I hope this video finds you well and enjoying the sunshine and the hints of summer and just staying sane during a crazy time. But we're jumping back into the series, Resisting the Enemy, and we're talking about a letter that John, the disciple John, wrote. It's found in the book of Revelation, and John has been exiled for his faith. He's been sent to this island of Patmos, where he is exiled away from these churches that he has helped plant because of his preaching and because of his faith. And he's writing these letters because he has received a vision from Christ. He's received this revelation from Christ. And these words that he is writing in the first couple chapters, he's sending off to different churches in Asia Minor to encourage them in their faith and a little bit to call them out. But these words that he's writing, although he is writing them, he has been inspired. He's been given these words by Christ. And so it's kind of from Christ's perspective. So I'm going to read for you from Revelation 3, verses 15 through 22. So Christ, through John, is saying this: I know all the things you do, that you are neither hot nor cold. I wish that you were one or the other. But since you are like lukewarm water, neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. You say, I am rich. I have everything I want. I don't need a thing. And you don't realize that you are wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. So I advise you to buy gold from me, gold that has been purified by fire. Then you will be rich. Also buy white garments from me, so you will not be shamed by your nakedness. An ointment for your eyes, so you will be able to see. I correct and discipline everyone I love, so be diligent and turn from your indifference. Look, I stand at the door and knock. If you hear my voice and open the door, I will come in, and we will share a meal together as friends. Those who are victorious will sit with me on my throne, just as I was victorious and sat with my Father on his throne. Anyone with ears to hear must listen to the Spirit and understand what he is saying to the churches. So the city of Laodicea, it was a very wealthy city, and it had kind of three main enterprises. The first being banking. They were at the intersection of three main roads, and so there was just a lot of people that would come through, and they would do a lot of money transactions, and the city was very wealthy because of that. And they were also wealthy because they had a large clothing industry. They would have a lot of black cloth that they made, and it would be exported to all areas of the world, at least the explored world at that time, and they would gain a lot of money from that. And the third one is this medical school that they had there, and it was famous and successful and largely well known because of their eye curing, the eye ointments that they would create that would help cure diseases. And so those were kind of the three main means of wealth in this city. But although they were wealthy, they also had not a very great water supply. And so the water would have to be imported from other cities. And they would get it from two cities, one to the south, Colossae. They would have it sent, that they were known for their cold, life-giving water that they would send several miles up the road through these aqueducts to the city of Laodicea. And there was another city, Hierapolis, from the north, and they would have these same aqueducts for miles that would send their hot water. They were known for their hot springs there. They would send this healing hot water from Hierapolis down to Laodicea. And so that's kind of just a brief background of this city. And there's words that Christ through John is saying here. He says, I know all the things you do. That's how he starts this letter. I know all the things you do. And that is kind of pointing to what the rest of the letter will lay out, in that Christ is recognizing these ways that Laodicea is finding their identity. They're finding their own sufficiency, their self-sufficiency in these different modes. And he is taking that and he is using that as an analogy to say, but actually you are not wealthy in these areas. He's taking the ways that they believe themselves to be self-sufficient and saying, in your spiritual life, you are poor in these areas, and this is why you need me. You may think that you are rich, but you are actually poor because I am the one who provides for you. And so I'm gonna run through those real quick and then talk about what that means for us today. So the first thing that he talks about is that you are neither hot nor cold. And so going back to this water supply, Laodicea is several miles from these cities where it's getting water. And so this cold and life-giving water that's coming from Colossae is coming several miles, and by the time it reaches them, it's been in the sun for this whole distance, and so it is no longer cold and life-giving, it is just lukewarm. And the same can be said for the water that's coming from Hierapolis. It started out hot, and it's known for this healing power that it has because it is hot, and by the time it gets to them, after all these miles, it has cooled off, and it is just lukewarm. And Christ is using this as an analogy for the spiritual lives of those in Laodicea. He says, I wish you were either hot or cold, because both of those are good things. This life-giving water, this healing water, hot or cold, I wish you were one of those. But instead you are just lukewarm. You are apathetic in your spiritual life. And he goes on to say that you are rich in these different areas. He says, you say, I am rich, I have everything I want, I don't need a thing. I'm self-sufficient. But actually, you are wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. And so these kind of three things at the end of that he talks about speak to Laodicea and how that they believed they were self-sufficient. So he says, you are poor. And because they were known for this banking, he's taking that and he's flipping it on its head and saying, although you think that you are rich in this area, you are wealthy, you are actually poor. And so he says, I advise you to buy gold from me. He's pointing them back to himself, saying, you may believe you are rich in this area, but you are actually poor, and you need to find your identity and find your wealth in me. The next one he says is you are blind. And so this is speaking to that medical school and that is famous for making the eye ointments for this healing thing. And he says, no, you need to buy ointment from me so you will be able to see. Again, pointing them back to him for that reliance. And then he says, you are naked. And buy white garments from me so you will not be shamed by your nakedness. He's saying, again, pointing them back to himself, that their reliance and their sufficiency should not come from their own worldly ideas, but that in their spiritual lives they need to recognize that they rely on Christ. And so then it comes to this passage that I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have heard. He says, look, I stand at the door and knock. And I think this has kind of been viewed a lot. It's been interpreted a lot in more of a salvation kind of way, where Christ is the one knocking on the door of the sinner's heart, saying, let me in, let me in. Or it's been used evangelistically, and it's us as Christians knocking on the door of the sinner, saying, let Christ in, let Christ in. But I think the more accurate interpretation of this is that in the lives of the Laodiceans and in our own lives, we have become so self-sufficient in certain areas that we are putting Christ on the outside, and we are saying those inside and what is inside this room is because of us, that we have kind of created this, or we have earned this, or we have accomplished this. And Christ is on the outside knocking, saying, let me in, because at some point you are going to come to the end of yourself where you fail, or what you believe to have been gained in your own life, what you are relying on, will fail. And Christ is saying, allow me to come in and to sustain you, to provide for you in this way. And so I think that's where the hope is found in this, that although this letter is largely the church in Laodicea being called out for their self-sufficiency, Christ continues to knock. He continues to desire more for them and for us. It goes back to he wants them to be either hot or cold. And I love the or I'll spit you out of my mouth. The word there doesn't just mean like a spit take, it's not just a spitting out of some water. It's like a vomiting. It's kind of crass and more violent than just a spitting, because God does not want us to just be apathetic in our faith. He does not want us to just proclaim him once and be done with it. But it's a passionate thing. He wants us to desire him. He wants us to move forward in our faith. And because of that, he does not want us to simply rely on our own doing and our own earning and all of this worldly ideas of self-sufficiency. But he wants to come in and be our sustainer. So, in your own life, what is your self-sufficiency? What is it in your life that you are relying on your own power for? Maybe it's a certain thing that you have succeeded at, or something you have accomplished, or some accolades or praises that you are receiving from other people. What in your life are you saying, I did this? I am sufficient in this area because of my own doing or because of my own strivings. For Laodicea, it was their wealth in their banking, and it was their livelihood, and it was their healing power. But Christ is saying, no, that's not how you view it. You need to rely on me. Allow me in. We need to repent of this self-sufficiency, and we need to rely on Christ to sustain us. So in your own life, I pray that you would recognize what it is that you are saying, I am self-sufficient. And that you would repent of that you would turn away from that, ask forgiveness, and say, Christ, fill me. Be my sustainer. Be my rock. Fill me.